Namaste everyone! So today's video is going to be about 13th lunar mansion known as Hasta Nakshatra. Hasta literally means a hand, and as you are going to see, it's quite symbolic in context of this lunar mansion. Now, a very interesting thing about Hasta Nakshatra is that even though it's considered to be one of the most auspicious nakshatras, one of the most auspicious stars, to start something new, yet when you are actually born with your natal moon in Hasta Nakshatra, it can prove to be psychologically quite complex. So first of all, one thing that might be not that obvious about Hasta Nakshatra and people born with moon in this lunar mansion is that their mind, their psychology is actually quite sensitive or even sometimes fragile. See, it's quite an interesting combination of energies that we are experiencing in this constellation because Hasta Nakshatra is ruled by very sensitive moon, while it dwells at the heart of sidereal Virgo ruled by Mercury. It's a very specific, combination of energies because Mercury and Moon are not really friendly towards one another. Mercury represents our intellect, which always wants things to be very well organized, and that is also one of the traits of Hasta Nakshatra natives. While Moon, on the other hand, is romantic, Moon is creative, Moon is sensitive and emotional, and sometimes the conflict between the two can happen when we are born with Moon placed specifically in this lunar mansion. In fact, this placement is quite sensitive both for Moon and Mercury purely from emotional perspective, even though Mercury is known to be actually exalted here. This conflict between the intellect and the more emotional sides of ourselves can sometimes become so huge, that it can even cause a significant mental disturbance in this lunar mansion. This is actually a very common thing that I have seen quite a few times. So if you are experiencing something like that, you need to know that with this particular lunar mansion, it's very vital that you take care of yourself, that you are kind towards yourself, not judgmental towards yourself, but that you also do something on a daily basis for your mind to keep you calm, to connect with your deeper nature, this moon-like nature that is in you, to nourish it. For example, through daily meditation or yoga practice, mantra practice, anything that will help you to calm and nourish your mind. Now, one amazing thing about Hasta Nakshatra is that it is one of the most creative and one of the most skillful lunar mansions. It actually very often blessed natives born with moon in this place with not just a lot of creativity, but also skill to execute their ideas, many different talents, to create something with the power of their own hands, right? Hasta. To create something and to not just, create it on a level of the mind, but to really materialize it, to manifest it. Because Virgo is a very material, very earthly sign, ruled also by earthly ruler Mercury. So this unique combination of energies, energy of moon and this heavier earthly Mercury, gives also Hasta Nakshatra natives very often various skills and talents that actually allow them to bring their ideas from the mind into the world. But Hasta Nakshatra natives, they're not just creative, It's not just the right side of their brain that is very well developed, but the left one too. They are incredibly intelligent, in fact, and can be incredibly detail-oriented. In fact, this quality of being very, very detail-oriented, very peculiar about things, and to take care, of even the smallest part of any task that they are dedicating themselves to can be a huge advantage to them. Yet, of course, people with that sort of placement are not always the best people to take care of huge projects when you need to overview a big picture, because they can be sometimes so focused, so fixated on the small little details, not always important details, that they literally miss the big picture. They miss what's actually important. This is why actually this particular nakshatra, this particular lunar mention, is quite common when it comes to people who are affected by the spectrum of autism, for example. And in fact, if you look at it, this special combination of energies, Moon's nakshatra dwelling in the sign of Mercury, you will notice that it somehow mirrors some of the qualities of Ashlesha as well, which is the nakshatra of Mercury dwelling in the sign of Cancer, ruled by Moon. Now, have you ever heard these jokes about Virgo natives, how they like when everything is very clean, they like to clean things, they can be even like obsessed with purity? That's actually Hasta Nakshatra, which dwells at the very heart of this lunar mention. This particular combination of energies, Moon and Mercury, can sometimes make person, like really sensitive when it comes to their environment, when it comes to their own things, their own possessions. Very private, very peculiar about them, which is once again a quality that you can also see in Ashlesha natives too. This is why among some really famous, Hasta Nakshatra natives, you can see that some of them had some really strange, things about themselves, like obsessive, compulsive, washing of hands. Walt Disney had that, for example. So, Hasta Nakshatra can be like really, really specific about those things, those little details. And the topic of purity and cleanliness, be it in literal sense, and sometimes even more in psychological sense, can really, affect their lives, even sometimes in some ways. Even when it comes, to topic of sexuality, it's very often not that easy for natives with Moon being placed in Virgo in Hasta Nakshatra, especially if this Moon experiences any form of affliction over there. Because when it happens, then Moon really becomes more like a virgin, This is why exactly Venus is debilitated over here. Because this, you could say, almost obsession to protect your own boundaries, your purity, etc., sometimes can go even to an unhealthy extent too. So it's a very, very interesting, lunar mention. And as you can see, it's psychologically quite complex. And if you have Moon in this particular placement, one thing that can be really helpful to you on daily basis to help to improve your mind and how your mind sees things, and so it doesn't affect you in any way, is first of all a very sincere daily introspection, like writing your thoughts down, trying to understand them, what's their root, their cause, and what are their consequences. But also praying to Lord Ganesha is something that is very, very helpful for natives with displacement, because the word Hasta, representing the hand, and Hasti, representing the elephant, are very similar. Hasta also happens to dwell in the very heart of Virgo, original sixth house of obstacles, while Ganesha is precisely the remover of obstacles. Because if we experience any obstacles in external life, it means that they are already existing in our mind. Also, you see, since our hands are all about, giving and receiving, you will notice that natives who have prominent placements in Hasta Nakshatra, like Moon, Ascendant, maybe even Mercury, they like always when everything is quite equal, quite fair and just. Sometimes they can be like literally obsessed about it, they really like, these are these kind of people that if they owe you, I don't know, $1, they very badly want to give it back to you. But very often you will notice that this quality of equality and that everything is like exactly how it has to be can be very, very important for them. In fact, it is only when this nakshatra becomes afflicted by some krura graha, by some cruel planet, that this quality of equality is kind of becoming afflicted too. And this is why you can sometimes find in the scriptures that this nakshatra is also being, let's say, accused of giving birth to people who are tricksters or thieves or who are very, very cunning. But the thing is that this happens only when some form of affliction is there. When instead of, trying to maintain this quality, and instead of trying to maintain the balance and equality in all things, that those natives rather succumb to a more darker side of this nakshatra, which produces greed. Hasta Nakshatra natives are also known to be sometimes a little calculative or even cold. They actually pay quite a lot of attention to this idea of giving and receiving, They pay quite a lot of attention to whether things are balanced between us, whether everything is exactly how it has to be. But sometimes it can be actually a big obstacle for them in their relationships, because relationship cannot be built on calculativeness. It's not possible. So when it comes to that, definitely one of their biggest life lessons, you could say, is to learn how to let go of this quality in their relationships and just be more light and natural and give from your heart, not just because you want to balance some debt. Do it only when you truly feel like it. Be more in the present moment. As you can imagine, precisely because all of those qualities brought together, these natives actually are very well organized and very practical and down to earth. They can organize things very, very well as well. The only thing that can make them prevent, from being very well organized is precisely when they get too focused on these tiny little details. But actually, they can really, they just have this unique capacity, this unique talent to, when you give them lots of data in which there's pure chaos, they will be able to make sense out of it. They will be able to organize it nicely. They'll be able to label it nicely. They just have this talent, and they can actually even enjoy doing so. This is why, not surprisingly, you'll find so many natives with moon in Hasta Nakshatra who are into mathematics, accounting, and economy, purely because they are good in that. And as Hasta Nakshatra is all about hands, about giving and receiving as well, these natives can be also very good in trade, precisely because they pay a lot of attention, whenever any exchange is taking place. They can be very good in trade, they can be very good businessmen, because they really try to make things equal, and they can truly make a lot of wealth because of that. So that is also one very interesting quality that these natives are having. Now, the word hasta is also quite similar to Sanskrit word hasya, which means to laugh. And actually, Hasta Nakshatra natives, one of their strongest sides is sense of humor, in fact. Because this unique combination of the energy of Mercury and Moon can really, make them into people who have really, really good sense of humor. You can see some of that sometimes in Ashlesha Nakshatra too, because again, Ashlesha Nakshatra is almost like a reversed energy of Hasta because of this combo of Mercury and Moon. However, both Nakshatra and Hasta in particular can also sometimes use humor as a defense mechanism. Can use humor to avoid giving you some answer. It can use humor in order to avoid talking about something difficult or connecting to some difficult feeling or emotion inside of them. This is, you could say, one of the biggest weaknesses of this lunar mansion, is that it's sometimes hard for these people to connect to their emotions. It's sometimes hard, for them to especially connect to these very, very difficult feelings like vulnerability, being disturbed. And whenever they talk about those feelings, they may either use humor in order to distract you, or they may rationalize it just to distance themselves from this feeling. But in practice, when you then talk about them, about something not so difficult they went through, you might get an impression that they are actually completely over it already, or that they are, completely detached from it, while in reality it might not be always true. So one of the biggest life lessons for these natives is to learn how to connect with their feelings and emotions in a healthy way, not in a destructive way, and to not let their own feelings and emotions, shake them out of their balance, but to not suppress them either. Hasta is also a very light nakshatra, and it dwells in a dual rashi, so it's naturally quite changeable in nature too. The minds of Hasta Nakshatra natives can be often very fast, impatient a little bit, quite fickle, quite changeable. But because of that, these natives can be also quite flexible. Flexible, not always in a way you would think. There are some things about which Hasta Nakshatra natives are very, very, peculiar, very particular, especially these tiny little details, which maybe sometimes can be almost a little bit annoying. But actually, when it comes to being in some form of stressful environment, and when it comes to, changing something in their plans, and if they see a logic behind doing so, they can be quite flexible, in fact. So it's again a very interesting combination of energies, because on one side we have here this very changeable and flexible moon, and this side of them can truly sometimes, shine. But on another side, we have this Mercury who likes everything to be as organized in advance as possible. This is why sometimes you can see different aspects of the same person emerging, but both aspects are actually present in them. And because Hasta Nakshatra natives have so many different qualities, on one hand, they're very peculiar about some things, especially the things that are connected with them, like their personal space, their personal items. And yet, on another hand, you can experience them being quite changeable sometimes. Because of that, of course, these natives, in order to thrive, they need quite a lot of personal freedom, They cannot really perform well when they feel like, completely, suffocated in a relationship. They need their own freedom to do things their own way, to express their feelings their own way, in order for their mind to find some form of comfort. And it's maybe not always easy placement to deal with if your partner, for example, has moon in this place. But remember that always whenever, they are dealing with something difficult, more than anything, they most likely need space from you and freedom. Sometimes you can also find Hasta Nakshatra natives being deeply interested in healing, conventional or unconventional medicine. This is once again the blessing coming from Moon and Mercury together, which we also already saw in Ashlesha natives too. It's true, Hasta Nakshatra natives sometimes can be even born with certain gift to heal people. Gift to heal people either literally or sometimes with their kind word. Or sometimes they literally feel like they have some form of healing power in their hands. So Hasta Nakshatra, especially when some very prominent planet is present there, can also lead a native towards a destiny related to healing, to bringing some form of relief to others. And this very often comes from their personal life journey, their personal experience, because their own minds and psychology are so sensitive. It's also easy for them to understand struggles of others. So that will be all from me about Hasta Nakshatra. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any placement in this lunar mansion, I hope that you can connect to it somehow. If you would like to know more about this lunar mansion, or in fact any nakshatra, you can check my nakshatra course, which is already finished, but you can still watch the whole course in your own pace and learn about the nakshatras, learn about the lunar mansions. Or even you can get just the module related to Hasta Nakshatra if you want to know about this particular constellation in greater depth. See what were other famous people who had placements in this nakshatra, what were their challenges, and how they coped with that. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll stay in touch with all of you. Namaste.